Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well this morning. I'd like to thank everyone for joining the webinar this morning. My name is Chris B, and I'm the president of Truvolv. I'll be one of your hosts for today's event. We're super, super excited to have everybody here. We had hundreds of companies actually register for this online event, and we're very, very excited about sharing some really, really meaningful insights on this call. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our good friends over at gFour Marketing for helping us sponsor this event, as well as Truvolv, which is my company here. We've assembled a really amazing lineup of industry legends that are going to share very, very actionable strategies and knowledge with you. Knowledge that you simply cannot find anywhere else in the industry. Before we get started with this webinar, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping. First, know that this webinar is being recorded. Everyone on the call is muted by default. So if you have any questions, please use that Q&A button that you'll see at the very bottom of your browser there. And we'll do our absolute best to answer those questions as we go along. We may or we may not be able to get to each and every one of you, but again, we will definitely do our best to answer questions as we go through this. We want this to be as interactive as we can possibly get it. Please, please, please stick around to the very end because we're going to be giving away a free iPad as well as a free pair of Apple AirPod Max headphones, kind of the big Mac Daddy ones. So hang out to the very, very end. We still have a lot of companies joining us, so we're gonna hang out probably about another minute and let these companies join. I see a lot of companies are entering as we speak. Before we get started, I'll share a little bit about our speakers as well. Brian Gottlieb, who most of you know. Brian Gottlieb is the visionary behind Tundraland Home Improvements out in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He also owned a bunch of Renewal by Andersen dealerships, jacuzzi dealerships, and he's the best-selling author of Behind the Hammer. A lot of you know that book and have read that book. If you haven't, I highly encourage you to go out to Amazon and buy that book. It can really, really change how you operate your business. Vince Nardo is another one of our speakers. Vince Nardo is the founder of Reborn Cabinets, one of the largest kitchen and bath remodeling companies in the state of California. I believe they also go in the Nevada, Arizona, and some other areas as well. Built an absolutely unbelievable business. Both Brian and Vince have built very, very large organizations and have been where you're trying to get to. They've successfully exited those companies to private equity, and they are really, really excited to share some information with you. Additionally, we have an amazing guest speaker in Dave Azer. Dave Azer is the vice president of Jacuzzi Bath Remodeling. He's the vice president of marketing, excuse me, of Jacuzzi Bath Remodeling. He has built and run one of the most successful inbound lead programs ever devised. It's about 1 million leads a year that Dave develops for his dealer network, his jacuzzi dealer network. So obviously, that network is probably one of the most successful networks in the country. Dave, again, is an absolute master when it comes to marketing. So he's going to be on this call as well, answering a lot of our questions and kind of going back and forth and having a great conversation. Some of the topics that we'll cover today will certainly be how to structure your business for growth. What can you do as a leader in your organization to elevate your business and help scale that company? What KPIs in business and disciplines matter the absolute most? I believe all three of our speakers are going to be answering that question. And then just overall, how do you win in your market? What can you do with your organization to make it perform at the absolute highest level? So we're about 3 minutes past the hour. We have a lot of companies that are actually still joining us, which is absolutely amazing. We thank you for your time today. Again, for those of you that don't join us, make sure that you hang out to the very, very end of the session because we're going to be giving away that iPad and those AirPods at the end of the session to people that are still on the call with us. So with that, it is my absolute great pleasure to introduce to you Brian Gottlieb, Vince Nardo, and Dave Azer. Guys, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Brian, I think you're on mute.
There we go. We'll try this microphone instead. Okay, is that better?
Yes, you're good.
We don't need this thing anymore. Okay, forget that. All right, nice to see everybody. Dave, Vince, you're both really good friends of mine. It's fun to watch the run you guys have had in business. I want to start off with some questions for Dave. Dave, look, I've known you for a lot of years, and you are, in my opinion, the best in the nation at lead generation, and there's not even a close second. I've seen what you do from a culture standpoint, from a team development standpoint, but I just think, and I know Vince can relate to this, when you grow a business, the first thing we run out of is parking spaces, right? So
Yeah.
you're generating nearly a million leads a year. How do you cover that from a call center standpoint? How do you think about insource and outsource and hours of coverage for your team? Please talk
Yeah.
about that.
Thanks for those kind words, Brian. People talk about should you have a physical office or virtual, and both can work. Today though, I prefer a virtual call center. I prefer it because we have people all over the US. It's much easier to hire. And then we have a nearshore staff in Belize through an agency. And we prefer Belize because that's nearshore, that's central time zone, and it's English first language. For hours, we're 8 to 8 Monday to Friday, 8 to 3 Saturday and Sunday. But at the same time, we always look at when do the calls come in and we have to set it for that. So we always let the data tell us when to staff our call centers. And right now, that's where we are.
So I want to just do a follow-up question on that. So when you're dealing with both you have a team of people that work for Jacuzzi, but then you have this outsourced call center. How do you think about leadership and connecting those
Yeah,
things? Is it
that,
different?
that's a great question, Brian. The most important factors to success is to treat the Belize people exactly like the US people, to give them the same leadership. If they're having a bad day, to give them a pump up conversation. Where we've seen some of our dealers struggle is when they don't do that. But if you make those Belize people 100% part of the team and they get every nuance of training, there's a lot of benefits in terms of ease to hire people in. It's also 40 cents on the dollar. It allows us to have better coverage, to take more inbound calls at all different hours and make better list penetration, and then also have more outbound database calling.
Okay, so look, your team is doing a tremendous amount of outbound work with all these potential customers. With that, when you're calling people a lot, it comes friction, right? It comes friction.
Yeah.
And how do you think about that in your business? Are you doing anything to kind of work around that friction that exists between
Yeah,
customer and
that's a
marketing?
that's a great question. It's hard to get people to answer the phone once, but it's certainly almost impossible to get them to answer the phone twice. So when we set the appointment, especially if it's like an inbound lead with a very high ratio to sell, we want to put as little friction between that lead as possible. So we're not going to call it to confirm it. We're not going to send multiple texts after the first text we sent the appointment. What we will do, though, to ensure the quality is we do a QA review where we have someone actually review that call. If it passes the QA review, we go and run it. If it doesn't pass it, we call to confirm it. And that's the feedback loop that we give to the call center reps to coach them on why it didn't get issued. That feedback loop is tremendous when the call center reps know you're going to listen to every single call. It's game changing for the quality. And then lastly, when somebody calls me from a TV ad or they at my website, I just want to lower the friction and get someone to knock on the door.
So let me just ask something real quick there, Dave, on that, because where I came from, we did the same thing, right? 100% QA. But can you kind of expand on that? Because I think that's a missed opportunity for a lot of companies. And is that like a QA where we listen to it, days later, or kind of
Yeah.
walk that through, and then kind of walk through do I have to spin up a whole nother call center just to listen to calls?
Sure. Well, first of all, most companies right now do voice-to-voice confirmations, right? And so you set the appointment, you call them 17 times, they finally answer, you call on them right up till that time. And so it doesn't cost more to have people listen to the calls. Additionally, you don't need somebody that's great on the phone. So that's all offshore, nearshore, very inexpensive to listen to the calls. And so how it works is that when we set the appointment, we just listen to every single call. Our strategy now is that if you have a call record and you're going to send a sales rep, why wouldn't you listen to it? It doesn't, it might cost you $2 for that person to listen to the call. It really doesn't make sense from my perspective not to. And then the feedback loop to the call center reps. One quick thing, when we first launched this, and I can, if we have time, go through the process, Vince. 40% of the calls failed the QA, and we had a call to confirm. Now, only 5% fail the QA.
That's great.
And so let me ask you another question. So with all the call centers you go out and see, and also, by the way, to all the participants, if you have any questions specifically for Dave, open that Q&A box at the bottom and pop those questions in, and we'll try to get them answered for you while Dave's on the hot seat. But Dave, so when you go out and I know we spoke about this a little bit, and you go see a lot of call centers, right? I mean, 1 million leads a year. It's super important to you that the call centers they're going to are probably performing well, right? Kind of talk me through is what separates an average call center from just an over-the-top great call center?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think it's the culture and then strong processes to ensure script and methodology compliance, right? Because if you think about it, if you got a strong culture, people are engaged, people want to be there, which can be challenging in a call center, and then you have strong processes to ensure compliance, to me, those are the two biggest things. And I think they work together because when you have a strong culture, it's easier to get compliance to methodology and scripting.
All right. Well, we had a couple questions pop in. So one of the questions was, what does the QA look like? Like, for example, what are you looking for? What boxes are you checking?
Yeah. So it's number one, you have the script, right? And so you have that they follow the script. And so you have each chunk of the script, and the script is designed to lead to a quality appointment. So really, the challenge isn't the checkboxes. The challenge is making sure you have the properly designed script. And then you're listening for nuance. So for example, you're listening for, will you be home tomorrow at 10? I should be home. I could be home. We're going to talk about AI later, and I love AI for a lot of things, but I don't want to send a sales rep out 45 minutes based on AI. In this case, I find it's better to have a human listen to the call. So to fully answer your question, number one, we have check boxes for each section of the script. They didn't change anything. And number two, we have the nuance of doubt in the voice, should be, could be, anything that could lead to something like, a project that we wouldn't do. So we have to teach people to listen for clues that maybe it's, moving walls, which we can't do, and things like that.
So you're essentially looking for the caller that pressed too far to make the appointment
Yeah.
and didn't even listen to the customer on the phone saying, I really don't want to do this. And the caller's just mowing them through.
Yeah.
Well,
in fairness, there's a lot of people that are interested, but they say things like, oh, I should be home. And we teach people to do something called questionable language. Well, Mrs. Jones, when you say should be, you don't sound so sure. Well, you and Jim definitely be home tomorrow at 10 o'clock. But if they don't do that, then it gets rejected. And we have to call to confirm it, and then we have to coach that call center up.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's just a separation of what needs a confirmation call and what doesn't.
Yeah, and quickly to go through that, if it's a branded lead, so TV, website, we go out 7 days on those. So we'll confirm as long as it's out within 7 days. If it's a lead aggregator lead, we'll go 2 or 3 days, depending upon how we're feeling and how badly we need the leads. We have a 90% demo rate though. The key is the call center reps knowing every single call is gonna be reviewed. It totally changes the game on quality. I want to add one more thing about this. One of the things that we truly believe in is a very steep sliding scale that pays same day, next day. So for example, if let's say you pay by demo, we would say this: pay $40 a demo for same day, next day, pay 20 a demo for 2 days out, pay 10 a demo for 3 days out, and pay 5 for everything else. Because when you look at it from your P&L, nothing impacts your P&L more than same day, next day, and 2 day out leads. Nothing. When you look at it, and so what we have a philosophy of is just let the structure just lead to what makes you money.
so following up on that, because we have a couple, and then I want to and this kind of leads into some of the KPIs. So you said that you went from a 40% failing of QA to 5% failing QA, right? So, I mean, in a nutshell, like what was the one thing or the two things that really made that change?
It was we weren't script compliant enough. Like when you're not listening to every single call, and we just weren't script compliant enough, number one. And number two, we weren't catching the should be, could be, my husband might not be home, didn't really get a commitment that the spouse would be home. So it was those two things, is that it tightened up our script compliance and then tightened up our listening skills, because now the call center reps have to listen and catch those clues, or else it gets rejected, they get coached, and truthfully, if you can't have a very high ratio that gets confirmed with the QA, you can't work here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then let's just real quick, I know we need to move on, but what are some of the KPIs you look at? And specifically, we did have a question on your demo rate. You said 90%. Was that issued to demo or set to demo? That was one of the KPI questions.
That's issued to demo. And just in fairness, and I think this is a Brian Gottlieb thing where we learned it. We call a demo just when we get to the bath, not a price. And I know why we do that, because now there's no excuse to try not to get a demo off. Although some people don't always like that policy, but it actually works very, very well. And so we're at 91%. It actually, that policy probably would pull it down a couple points. So like if you call a demo when you give a price, it will probably be 88, 89.
Awesome. So I got a question for you. Look, we've all seen how the advances in technology within our industry over the last 10 years has been, I mean, you got to almost put a seatbelt on. It's been a roller coaster. But AI, what role do you think AI plays within a call center or within marketing in general?
I think it plays a big role, but I think the mistake we've seen more than how to utilize AI is over-reliance on AI. So for example, AI can tell you what calls to listen to. AI can give you reporting on trends on people handling the price objection. But when supervisors rely on it too much and don't listen to calls, there's still nothing like a supervisor or a trainer or a coach listening to a call, hearing it directly, and then passing that feedback. So AI can be very helpful in telling you what to listen to, but we've also seen the mistake of people over relying on it, and then it hurts performance.
Yeah, that's great. I kind of want to jump into Vince now for a minute, if I may. Vince, again, we've known each other for a very, very, very long time as good friends, and we know that ultimately business is about execution. And
Yeah.
as you travel the country and talk to so many different companies, what do you think causes execution gaps inside of a business?
Well, there's a couple things, and I think it changes upon the stage of the business is at. So, in the early days, specifically in our business, the early days it was really I was the blocker, right? My brother and I were the blocker. We couldn't get out of our own way. We were focusing too much on the day of the business rather than the strategy and the execution of the process. Once we changed our mindset and said, we have to be executing on a regular cadence, then that was a lot fixed. Got fixed. Now, when we grew and we had 700 team members, one of the biggest issues there was siloing. What we saw was every department started getting into their own silo and only worked in their silo. And until we made a conscious effort to break those silos down, and instead of making it vertical, making it horizontal, then everybody got on the same page and everybody was understanding that, listen, we have to be working on the most important things in the business every single time and executing on them with precision.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's terrific. So
Yeah.
you said as your business was growing, and look, we know you built a monster business. When you exited, how many employees did you have at your highest number?
Almost 800, a little over 800.
And you were in a lot of different locations
Yes.
on the West Coast. But it wasn't always like that. What was your personal tipping point that took you from where you were to really building a successful business?
So, you can read a lot of books and they all talk about, put the end in mind, work towards the end, work towards a target. And that's all well and good, right? Yeah, great. I want to exit at this. I want to have this kind of money. I want to have this in my life, whatever it is. And that's all great. And it's a theory, but it's really understanding how to put that practice to work. And until, my family was a family business, or family with a business, as I call it. But at the point where we made the conscious decision that we were going to work towards a goal, we all set daily sales targets, right? We all set daily issued lead appointment targets and we strive for those. But a lot of businesses set the goal for the business. When we sat back several years ago and said, this is where we want to be and this is how we want to get there, and then we really set the entire executive team on that mission, that was the number one change. And we literally, kid you not, I know we've had these conversations, Brian, we hit the mark. We hit the mark. Maybe we were a year, I think we might have been several months off, but we hit the mark. And if you don't lay that in front of you as a business owner, as a strategist, I don't care if you run a department, I don't care if you run a whole business, but you've got to have that ultimate target up in front of you. And I understand Mrs. Jones's house, we flooded it out yesterday. I get it, but we've got to be focusing towards that target.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Great stuff. That's
So,
great stuff.
Vince, I have a question for you. From your perspective, what makes for a great customer journey and how does that impact lead generation?
So, and that's important because we all talk about, a lot of these things you talk about on these webinars is all about getting the lead and selling the lead, right? What we don't talk about is once we sold the lead, is operating the lead, making a good experience for the customer, ultimately getting a referral, which is a lot of what gFour works on, right? I mean, gFour is all about getting the referral. How do we get the next customer and how do we maximize that customer? And I think the other thing we got to recognize is the least expensive customer we can bring in is the referral, is the repeat customer, right? I mean, with marketing costs skyrocketing north of 15, 18, 20% in many, many cases, the minute we get a repeat client or a referred client, we're 20% ahead on profit just out of that. So I think one of the key things is mapping that customer journey, but really mapping that customer journey. What are the touch points? We sold it. We're great getting that. Now what is next? When do we notify the customer? When do we talk to the customer? How can we use automation to get to that customer? And how do we make sure that everything we did to market to get the sale continues through the entire process all the way to the end? And I see a lot of businesses, even the one I came from, that we deviate from that journey. We forget the importance of that journey. And today, if I think about my wife and the way she purchases stuff and the way she wants answers, she wants them now, right? There's no waiting for tomorrow. There's no waiting for an hour. It's immediate response. We're groomed for that. And our customer journey has to produce that same response rate.
Yeah, I think that's great. Dave, I want you to think of another question for Vince, but before you ask it, let's pass it back to Eric or maybe Chris for, I think, a quick little message from our sponsors.
Cool, excellent. And a great segue for me, Vince, because what I'm going to talk about is that immediacy, being really, really fast. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris B, and I'm the president of Truvolv. Truvolv builds out the most highly converting websites on the internet. We offer paid media, search engine optimization, social media, online coaching by some of the people that are on this call today with us, and I'll talk very little about that. But know that we are hyper focused on conversion. I'm going to talk a lot about that. The next slide is one that I'm super proud to be a part of. This is the founding team of Truvolv. So it's people like Brian Gottlieb, Vince and Anthony Nardo, Brian Cascavalso at the Accelerate Summit, Eric Bonner, formerly with Jacuzzi, are all founders in this company. And this is a company of the industry for the industry. So we are about solving problems as it relates to generating leads online and ultimately setting, issuing, and closing those leads. So the next slide, we'll share a little bit of information about what our core philosophy is. It is conversion. Conversion is the answer to the challenge that everyone has in the industry right now. A really highly converting website might convert at 4, 5, 6, 7%, leaving the bulk of your traffic completely and totally unconverted. Speed is the answer. The reason that speed is the answer, and by speed I mean how quickly your website loads, is because latency, or the inability of a website to load really quickly, essentially instantaneously, is the #1 reason that people abandon a website conversion process. Speed is absolutely critical. And this is not just my data, it's Deloitte, it's Cloudflare, it's all of these massive organizations studying the speed of the website. On our next slide, we'll talk about a few different things, from how the speed problem is challenging the home services industry. The biggest problem that the home services, home improvement companies have is that they're using WordPress or Webflow to run your websites. Both of those platforms are simply slow and outdated. And on average, it takes about 15 seconds to load a WordPress or Webflow website fully in your browser, which is just far too slow. What we've done is we've created a new platform called TrueSpeed, and TrueSpeed is a headless content management system that allows websites to load instantaneously. It delivers unmatched reliability and security. It scales effortlessly. It operates and costs a fraction of the cost of something like WordPress or Webflow. And it simply outconverts those other two platforms on a daily basis. And what's really cool about this is now the home services, home improvement industry can take advantage of the same type of technology that companies like USA Today, ESPN, Walmart, Apple, CNET, they're all using the same type of headless content management system that we're currently offering. And what the next slide is going to show us is what it looks like. So when you click around this, just look how quickly these pages load instantaneously. And we're loading video in a lot of cases in milliseconds. It allows for this long user experience using product selectors that, again, load instantaneously. Galleries are critical to what you do, but they operate far too slowly. Our galleries load as quickly as you can tap on that mouse is how fast we can load an image. So speed, it equals conversion. If there's one thing that you can do with your website to get more leads, it's to speed that website up. One last thing that I'll quickly talk about is that we want to go beyond the lead. We believe in success beyond the lead. You know, I've been in this industry for a very long time. I see a lot of digital agencies hand off a lead, cross their fingers, and hope that it works. We want to go past that. We want to help you scale your business. So True Coach is a program that we've developed. It's an online learning management platform where you get access to the absolute best minds in the industry. And the next slide will kind of break down what that looks like a little bit. Our two main coaches right now are Brian Gottlieb, Vince Nardo, but there are a lot of other coaches currently joining True Coach. And what you do is you get access to this group of people, and they will actually help you scale your business through online video trainings. And the next slide is just one quick example of some of the things that we train on, from the art of 10-step selling, time management secrets, mastering call centers, which is always a huge topic, but so is team alignment, mission, and vision. So now we have this resource for all of our members out there that for everyone to take advantage of that can build leaders within inside of your organization. We've automated that process for you. So I won't take a lot more of your time. We're going to load a quick poll for you really quick. If you would like a little bit more information about what we do at Truvolv, just click that yes button. We will reach back out to you. We have a lot of people on the call. We actually have more people on the call now than we started with. So we'll leave this poll up for another 5 or 6 seconds and give everyone a minute to hit the yes button, and we will follow up with you. We'll give you information as to how fast your website performs. We'll give you a lot of interesting reports as it relates to your website. So we're going to go ahead and close the poll in 3, 2, 1, close the poll, and then I'll hand it back to our panel. Thank you very much for your time, guys.
All right. Hey, everybody. So another question for Vince. You know, it's hard to have all the answers when growing a business. So who did you turn to when making difficult decisions? Any peer groups?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is being a manager of an area of a business, or being an owner of a business. It's sometimes lonely, because you only work within your business and you're not getting exposed to other areas outside of your business. So I learned a long time ago that I can't, nor am I the smartest person in the room. And the best knowledge that I could gain is from those others in the industry, because the one thing that I have appreciated most about this industry specifically is the willingness of other business people and whether they're competitors or in another market or whatever, the willingness to get together and share. So I am a firm believer of peer groups. I'm a firm believer of mentorship. And if you know anything about Brian and myself and the group we had a group called the Big 12. And that was a group of very, very successful business owners that took their businesses to levels that are unattainable by most. And it was through that friendship and that mentorship and checking our egos at the door, but taking that information and being able to bring it back and actually put it to work in our business. So absolutely a firm believer of peer groups and mentorship.
Yeah, that's great. What's in little trivia. When we started our Big 12 group, and it was originally called the Dirty Dozen, the total revenue of all the companies combined was about $100 million. Today, if you take all those companies and add them up, it's close to $3 billion in revenue. So when you think about unbelievable growth. Anyway, Vince, in business, okay, the single most important discipline in your opinion, what is it?
The single most important discipline in business for me is making sure that everybody understands where the business is going, and ensuring that front and center every single day, like I talked about earlier, is the actual goal we're trying to achieve. And when you can get everybody in the right seats on the bus, to use a pun from some other books, right? And you can get the bus going in the right direction, and everybody's is achieving the exact same goal, you blow off the top. And that is the trick. That is the trick of in my opinion, of business.
That's great. I love that. That's awesome.
Well, thanks, guys. So let me, it's time for you, BG. Let's put you on the hot seat.
Okay, I'm ready.
So, you know, when you think about business and you think about process, and we've talked a lot about what Dave said and I said and all that. Why do you think customer or companies actually struggle to document their processes? What holds them back?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I've gone around the country and done a ton of keynotes, and I always ask people, how many of you need to do a better job documenting your processes? And everybody's hands go up. In fact, I bet if we did a poll on this, it would be probably 99% of the people know they need to do a better job with it. And I think the challenge is the approach, because when we think about documenting processes, that's really the sausage making of things, right? We're making the sausage. It's much better, but we don't necessarily know what that sausage is supposed to look like when it's finished. I think the key to documenting processes, that's really the second thing to do. The first thing is identifying what are your core business disciplines. And what I mean by that is, once we understand what a core business discipline, and a business might have several disciplines. One discipline might be like the lead is sacred. Okay, if that's a business discipline, then we have to ask ourselves, okay, if the lead is sacred, how do we treat a sacred lead? How quickly should we call it? What script should we use? What technology should we use? We can then start to create the processes around the discipline. The same is true when we think about, well, one of our disciplines in our businesses, where when we're done with a job, we get paid in full, 100% at completion. Okay, that's a business discipline. Okay, now what do the processes have to look like in order to deliver to that? I think when you start jumping in with process first, I think it's really hard to get a clear process because you don't have a discipline that connects with it.
Makes complete sense. Complete sense. And with that, as the business starts to change and grow, I mean, you built several very large successful businesses. How did you see that the role of the leader manager change as the business progressed in all those different years?
Yeah, well, my role included, by the way. I mean, I remember, and I think a lot of times when we're growing a business, it's so interesting because we all got here probably the same way. It's not like any of us had this grand master business plan to open up these home improvement companies. We probably worked for somebody. We were probably miserable there. So we decided to do it on our own. And next thing you know, we got a little traction. And before you know, we got a company, and now we got a business, and I don't know what I'm doing. And we're leading things so look, so our roles do change. And I think there are a couple of ways that, first of all, I had an epiphany that the lid of the business was directly connected to the lid of the team. That if I really want to build my business, I have to build the people, right? I have to build the people. But along that process also is the idea that, it's not about my performance anymore. It's about the team's performance. And as a business builds and as your team builds, your absolute focus has to be around how do you not just help people realize their potential, but really help them reach it. And what are the things they need in order to get there? And I would also share with you that what's so cool about it is when you do go all in on building people, it's probably one of the most rewarding things in the world. When you see others grow and you really become that kind of a leader. The last point I'll make to it is that it's interesting because when a business is small, when you have a small team and you have to make a decision, a business owner, you're a great decision makers. We can make great decisions, right? But as the business gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we might not necessarily be the right person to make certain decisions in the company because we're so far removed from the customer. And that's the other way I think when we talk about checking our ego at the door, part of that ego is we might not be the best decision maker for any given situation. And for that, we need a good team.
Well put. And just a reminder, I know, Dave, I think you got a quick question, some questions for Brian. You can drill them next. But just a reminder, everybody, listen, if you have questions for Brian Gottlieb, the best-selling author, I mean, I can't believe how many books he sells on Amazon. It's incredible to me. Get those questions in the chat so we can get them answered.
My leadership team is right now reading Beyond the Hammer as a book club. So anyways, here's my question, Brian, and this is certainly one of my favorite things we've learned from you and work to follow your lead. You did a lot of free community projects like Bass for the Brave, Windows for a Cause. How did that impact your culture, and how do you recognize the costs of these projects?
Yeah, near and dear to our heart was to do well and to do good, right? And what is the purpose of business but to make a decent profit decently? And how do you do that, right? And we just found that, what we found is an interesting evolution. We used to give to nonprofits, and I'd write some check and we'd mail it in, and I felt like it went in this river, and we never saw the results of it. And nor did anybody, it didn't inspire anybody in our business. So we wanted to create a program. We wanted to, first of all, create a company that was truly woven into the fabric of the communities that we served. And we thought, the best way to do that is, how do we get everybody in our organization involved in doing cool things for people in our community where we can see the results? So you're right. So Bass for the Brave is a big part. Jacuzzi's always been a very, very big sponsor and promoter of Bass for the Brave, donating free materials for people. Vince, your company has always been a big participant in Bass for the Brave. And if you don't know what that is, it's a program where we would surprise veterans that have mobility challenges across the country with free shower projects. It was a cool thing. But what we found it did is it gives people more than just a paycheck, right? I mean, we have to give people meaning and purpose if we really want to build the right kind of culture, because there's always going to be somebody else that can pay $1 more an hour. So how do you give people a better reason to stick around? Now, these projects don't come free. They cost the businesses money. What I found is it's actually a marketing cost, because it's my belief that when you can enter into conversations with the consumer through cause marketing, it makes all your other marketing work better. Instead of just barking half off installation, buy one, get one free, cause marketing puts a human side to your business and makes everything else work better. So I appreciate that question, and it's near and dear to my heart. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, and it's been so great working with you and on that project. It's been so rewarding.
Yeah.
And so now let me grill you with the same question you asked Vince. What causes execution gaps in a business?
Yeah. Look, a couple of things. When a business is new, and I know Vince, myself, and probably any other business leader on this meeting can realize that, look, there are times in our business when we might be selling a lot of stuff, but we're probably not making any money. We're mighty busy selling stuff, but we didn't make any money. You see, and a lot of it is from chaos. Chaos can certainly produce revenue, but it's discipline that truly produces profits. And I think understanding that, and complexity is the enemy to execution. A business needs to execute. The more complicated we make things, the harder it is for anybody to execute on it. But here's the truth. It is very easy to create a complicated business, and it's very difficult to simplify things. It's so easy to start laying on processes and procedures on top of the business, and next thing you know, I need unicorns to run every single department, and unicorns are hard to find. So I think what causes execution gaps is you have to strip out the complexity of an organization, and equally important, people inside of the organization. I'm surprised on how many businesses don't do this. Every single person in the organization should understand how their performance is being measured. They need to understand, how is their performance being measured, and how can they have a daily KPI around it, 1, 2 KPIs, so they can understand their performance properly, and their compensation should be connected to that KPI. When we do that, execution tends to happen a whole lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone has a question for you, Brian. And by the way, Bella says you're an inspiration. He is, Bella. Absolutely. So here's the question. When building and creating a strong culture of excellence and belief, where is the best place to start? Top down or bottom up?
Well, yeah. So if we think about, the organization needs a mission and a vision, right? First and foremost, why does your business exist? Is your mission statement. Your vision statement is, what does the business aspire to become 3, 4, 5 years from now? And how does your team win? What behaviors do you need from the individuals on your team in order so your business can reach its aspirational goal? In many ways, you might say, well, that's very top down. It doesn't, if you don't have a mission and vision, you don't have to do it in a silo. You can build one out with your team. I think a great way to come up with a cool vision statement, what do we need to become 3, 4, or 5 years from now? Start by saying, get your team together and ask the questions, how do we lose? When do we screw up with our customers? When do we screw up with each other? Make a list of the things that we do wrong, and the opposite is typically how we win. If maybe we're horrible communicators, or maybe we're negative, or all these kind of things, well, then maybe our vision statement is we aspire to become a world-class organization. We win by keeping a positive attitude, by being great communicators, by identifying the behaviors that are needed to help take you to your aspirational goal. That really aligns the entire organization. And then you have something to rally people behind. So I don't think it requires everybody. It's not just top down and it's not just bottom up. It's both and not either or.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about these things. I mean, I laughed when you said about the not making money part, because I remember a gazillion years ago, you and I getting on the phone and going, "What the hell, right? What the hell's going on here?" But I think you've been a great proponent of culture in a business, and really making sure that the culture there. And I think you've also been a great proponent, and maybe you can talk about it, because I've seen this in a lot in businesses, is you have to be honest, right? When you talk about, where we're failing with the customer, I can get on so many calls with a leadership team or a business leadership team, and all I get are the excuses why the problems happen, right?
Yeah, yeah. And look, this. Yes, you have to be honest. You have to be authentic. I'd use that word.
Yeah.
You have to be authentic with your team. But here's the thing. Here's the risk of many business owners and managers in this industry today. Look, we want customer-centric uh, people. We want a customer-centric business. But if you look behind the curtain of these meetings that happen inside of organizations, it's talking about closing average, talking about marketing costs, talking about labor costs, talking about demo rate, talking about material, all of these transactional things. And occasionally we talk about the pissed off customer. When do we talk about the happy customer? When do we talk about that person? How do we bring the happy customer into every meeting? Because people need to understand that as much as they need to understand everything else. Because we are a customer-centric business, and the
Yep.
happy customer's voice needs to be heard.
So before we get to the last question, because I'm going to drill you on the last one, or ask the most important question, let me kick it over to Felipe.
All right. Thanks, Vince. And yeah, I mean, I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about gFour and then hopefully share, a couple of data points that the audience will find interesting. So, at its highest level, gFour really, for the past 15 years, we've been helping contractors grow by nurturing profitable relationships with their customers, right? And that's typically when people say, "Wow, that's really boring," or I already do that, right? And they're right. What we do isn't really complicated. It's not rocket science, but I think we have a strong belief that it is foundational to building a great business, right? That will stand the test of time. And before I kind of jump into kind of how we do it a little bit, if we go to the next slide, I'll talk to why we do it, right? So, Vince, you talked about some of the data points about repeat and referrals, and two that we typically like to look at is one at the top left here, which comes from an HBR article and study, is that acquiring a new customer is 10 times more expensive than an existing one. And then on the bottom left, there's actually a analysis we did from all the contractors we worked with, thousands of contractors over the 15 years we've been in business. And we found out that actually 80% of referrals happen 3 months after the job is complete, which is pretty interesting from a data point perspective. And what this tells us is that you really need a system, you need a process in place, right, to be able to extract value from your repeat customers and from your referrals. A lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. So how we do this and kind of how we've approached this, if we go to the next slide, is it starts obviously with that happy customer that Brian was just talking about, right? That you need to deliver on the promise that you've made to your customers. You need to deliver on that client experience. But after you've done that, you need a system, a relationship marketing system that, will thank the customer. You need another system that will make sure that you are asking for referrals. You need another system that will make sure that you're soliciting reviews. You need another system that will make sure that, you're staying in touch with that customer, that long-term nurture aspect of it. So, and all of those systems need to talk to each other to make sure that things are moving, right? So, in the next page here, kind of, I won't go too much into it, but this is how we typically do it, right? We automate it. We make it really easy to have a system in place where we connect with your CRM, we pull that information, and then we are consistently saying thank you. We're consistently kind of asking for reviews, asking for referrals, and staying top of mind with those customers so that when they are ready to buy again, they remember you and the experience that they had. And if you do this, this is, if you go to the next page, this is typically what we want to see, right? So as we call kind of like that web of customers, like over time, that one single customer that you acquired in the front end, they're leaving you a 5-star review. They're coming back, they're buying again, they're, referring, and that one customer becomes 5 customers, becomes 10 customers. And then if we go to the next page here, what else we want to see, is we want your customers becoming your raving fans, right? At gFour, we typically say your customers are your best marketers, right? So this is 2 examples of customers that are delighted, they had an amazing experience, and then you come back and you show appreciation, you say thank you, and they weren't expecting. And this type of marketing is something that Dave could probably attest, is like every marketer's dream. You want your customers going out and doing the marketing for you. So that's kind of what the results you typically want when you deliver on that customer experience and you have a system to kind of consistently stay on top. You look at the next page here. This is the example of what we don't want, right? This is the contractor that's the one and done, doesn't deliver, doesn't wow. That's just, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. You spend all this money on that lead up front. So you should be extracting and putting systems in place, processes in place, to recognize that value of that customer. Next page here. So, we'd love to kind of have that conversation with people here. We spend all day thinking about repeat business, referrals, reviews, systems, processes. So these are kind of some of the results our clients typically see. So, if you're interested in kind of, talking about what your referral program looks like, what systems you have for saying thank you to your customers, how to stay in touch with them, love to continue the conversation. So maybe we'll go to the next page here and open up that poll for a couple of seconds to the people. There we go. Give it maybe a couple more seconds. And then I'll hand it back over to Vince, Brian, and Dave to kind of wrap it up.
Thanks, Felipe. So before we get to the end and start doing some panel, we've got a lot of questions in the Q&A. So if you guys have questions, get them in the Q&A. We're going to spend some time going through those, and you can drill Brian, myself, or Dave. But I want to ask Brian, the question he asked me was, if you look at business and you've got all these things to do and all these places to focus on, and what really is the most important discipline in business?
Yeah, I liked it when you answered it, by the way. I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to give you a personal discipline, and I'm going to give you a business discipline. From a personal discipline, it's the idea that there's a big difference between being right and being influential. If I'm trying to coach people up, I could be right all day long. It doesn't mean they're going to change. And I have to always remember to be influential, whether I'm with a customer, whether I'm with a teammate. So I think that's a discipline. But from a business discipline, I would say of all the disciplines, that look, a lot of people need to hire somebody. They need to hire somebody, but they're afraid to take on the overhead inside of the business. And that's typically a symptom of a bigger problem. The truth is they're afraid to invest in their own business. But the reason they're afraid to invest in their business is because they don't have a high level of confidence that they're going to hit any future targets that they created. To me, the single most important discipline in business is not just to create targets, but to hit targets with a high level of certainty. Yeah. Because the better we can hit targets with a high level of certainty, the more willing we are to invest in the business. That doesn't happen in a silo, like you were talking about, Vince. We both know that. How do you elicit the team? How does everybody on the team not just help create the targets, but then are accountable to achieving them, and teaching each business leader inside of your organization, it's as if they're running their own separate business within the business. And when you start doing those sort of things, then hitting targets, they become more of a habit and instead of a fluke. And when you do that, that's when things really get fun, I promise you.
And that's why he's a best-selling author of Beyond the Hammer. So before we get on, let me, Bonner, Eric, you're around. Why don't you come on? We haven't seen your face for a little while.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This has been fantastic, thank you. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Eric Bonner. I was SVP with Jacuzzi Bath for many years. I'm now a very happy owner, investor in Truvolv. And I've been having a couple of questions here that I get when I go out and visit companies, and actually a couple people have texted me this. Um, in today's marketplace, when we talk about customer journey, how important is it to you guys? Maybe I'll start with Brian and then shoot over to Vince on scripting installers, both pre and post install.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, as you know, the immediate pushback to scripting, you would think, is that I don't want a bunch of robots. But the truth is, people have to understand if you don't have consistency, it's very difficult to scale. And consistency on the customer journey and how anybody interacts with the customer needs to be modeled out. It needs to be scripted. And we found that we had some of the greatest installers out there, but they didn't know how to like ask for a check. They didn't know how to ask to get paid or really talk to the customer about what to expect for today's install. So look, I think the more people you can have scripted through the entire organization, the better off you are. In fact, your training programs, if you model your business like a training organization, as I write about in my book, shouldn't just be about how to swing a hammer. It should be about, well, how do you lay down a drop cloth? How do you let the customer become happy? What do you say to this homeowner? How do you discuss the warranty with them at the end of the project? All of these things I think should be scripted, and why not? What do you think, Vince?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I agree with it 100%. And, we fell into this trap early on in the business and we wanted the script to be verbatim, right? We're like, you got to say exactly like this. And to your point, we learned as we scaled and we had the wrong people and even though they were taught, they became robotic. Yeah. But, I look at scripting as not that it has to be read that way, but it is the fail safe for the newer person entering our business that just absolutely freezes on exactly what to say. And the scripting is basically the language that is their backup. But to your point, we often neglect, and we neglected post-sale training and post-sale uniformity across the organization. And once we started getting to the hundreds of team members and understanding that, listen, we can't take for granted that everybody knows how to put down a drop cloth, right? We can't take for granted that everybody knows how to knock on the front door, or take for granted how everybody knows how to, hey, I need to collect the final payment. We need to make sure that customer journey is solid, is taught, and is end-to-end done the exact same way every single time with the personality of the person giving the information.
That's great.
Awesome. Thank you. I have another question. I've been asked this many times through the years, and this is for anyone as well. Dave, you can jump in on this as well. You've all run very, very, very successful businesses and departments. Every company runs weekly department meetings, right? Whether it's sales, marketing, production, operations. Besides covering basic KPIs, that's very, very important each week through the department. How do you see those meetings structured for engagement and positivity besides just covering KPIs? What do you see successfully with those meetings?
Let me take that quickly. Catch people within core values. So we love to do that at our meetings, especially like our big, 100 people department wide. We'll have the leaders give us 15 different people. We'll give them a specific reason why they were within the core values. And again, and I think this goes back to what Brian said, right? We have to, at these meetings, we have to catch people doing something right.
Yeah. I would add that, that in every meeting, there should be an empty chair and put a sign on that chair that says customer on it. because everything we do, whenever we do anything inside of our organization, we have to really think about how does that impact the customer. Otherwise, we could very easily find ourselves doing self-serving changes in the business that might be good for one part, but might not be a great customer journey. So that's, I think, a super important piece as well.
Yeah.
Love that.
Hey,
One last
Eric.
question. Yes.
Can I ask Dave a quick question? Something we skipped over. Dave,
Please.
what do you think a marketing, how do you think of a cost of a call center against revenue? What should that cost? What should companies budget?
This is going to shock some people. I want it to be between 3.25% and 3.5%. And when I've coached dealers on this, 6 months later, they come back to me and they tell me that was the most impactful thing that they did. Because what it does is it lowers your marketing cost and gets more out of the leads that you generate.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Very helpful. Very helpful.
All right, Eric, we got 5 more minutes. I know we got to do a drawing.
5 more minutes and a drawing. I had one sales related question. Somebody just texted me, not in the meeting chat. I just got a text. What are some of the best qualities or traits that you see with sales managers that are separate from successful sales reps? Because people make the mistake, right? Hey, you're a successful rep, I'm going to make you a manager. That's not always the best case. So quickly, can one of you guys answer that?
Yeah. Can I go first, Vince?
Yeah.
I'm going to give a very different answer. Ready for this one? Love.
Yeah.
Bear with me. They have to love the process. They have to love developing people. They have to love the home improvement industry. They have to love the KPIs. They have to love the accountability. Love is what fuels excellence. If I think about any great athlete out there, if they don't love the sport, they're probably not going to be a great athlete. They have an absolute love for what they do, and that fuels excellence. It's very difficult to get excellence without love.
Yeah. And I'll add to this, thinking about that. In-home sales is a solo sport, right? You don't play with a team. You're solo in there. It's just you and the customer. It's mano a mano. It's let's play. Let's dance. Let's see who can walk out with the sale or not walk out with the sale. Sales management is a team sport. And when you try to take a person that's a solo sport player and put them in management and have them play on a team, sometimes it's very difficult. They become a ball hog. And they become a ball hog on the court. So I think it's very important that when we select sales managers, to Brian's point, I agree 100%. They have to be a team player and they have to be serving of their team before themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
Love it.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
We build teams by building people, right? The science of building a business revolves around the art of building people.
Outstanding, guys. I know we have some prizes to give away.
Ooh. Yay.
Turn it over to Chris and Felipe.
So, hey, by the way, thank everybody for popping on here. I know Vince, Dave, we all appreciate it very much. Giving up an hour in your day is a big deal. I hope we added some value to you today. So look forward to this giveaway here.
Yeah, I second that. Absolutely amazing content as always, guys. This is definitely something that we're going to continue to do in the future. In fact, I think as you exit this meeting, there'll be a little poll for you to kind of take at the end that might guide future conversations for us. So, again, thank you, Vince. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Felipe. Let's go ahead and give some things away. The winners of I'm going to pull these out and say this correctly, the AirPods Max. So it's the headphone version of the AirPods. Is Mike Carroll. So our friendly neighbors to the north, we will reach out to you, Mike, and deliver it out to you right away. And then Felipe, I know you have a giveaway as well.
Yeah, so the winners of the iPad, and I don't have it, but we will ship it to you, and we'll be in contact via email, is Chris Edeline. So we'll be in contact, Chris, and appreciate everyone, as Brian said, appreciate everyone joining and participating for all of this. So Chris, handing it back to you to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, Chris Edelin, well deserved, great person, super smart, runs some great businesses. So look for Felipe to reach out to you and get that delivered out to you. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for being on the call today. We kept just about everybody the entire length of the call. So hopefully that means you really, really enjoyed the content. And we look forward to doing this again with you in the future. Thank you so much. Again, appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
everyone.